know that the undercurrent is going to exist if you don't represent those things, those words on the wall, and they're very real. And there's a way to control that. And it starts with the individual, right? Like, don't be a part of that water cooler conversation that's talking about another department, talking about another person. Walk away from it. Don't start it, because it could really stir up out of control. One innocent comment can turn into something that really spins out of control quickly. You know what I mean?
Every single individual has a story to tell, and they're great stories that need to be heard.
I want every listener to know they have the ability to change the world.
Welcome to the 1720 podcast.
What's up, Mountain Movers? Welcome back to the 1720 podcast. Had a few awesome guests the past couple weeks sharing their story and the testimony. And now you got Stewie and I. Stewie, it's been a few weeks. Good to see you, my man.
Yeah, likewise. But I have to run back what you were saying there. I couldn't hear you because your shirt is so loud. You ever heard that?
Loud shirt.
Yeah.
Loud shirt. I actually said that this morning. So I started my day in Fort Worth, and obviously get changed there. I work out wherever I'm starting my day. So I was in Fort Worth, and leaving the gym, dude behind me is like, "Hey man, nice shirt." And that was actually my dad reply, pretty loud, just like me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he laughed. He's like, no, man, I like it. He didn't actually recognize the Texo logo. Yeah, I was like, right. Yeah, this is actually the logo for our construction association. And he goes, no kidding, you're in construction?
Oh, there you go. That's a fun story. Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, man. He's like, what do you do? I'm like, I was in construction most of my life, and now I'm working on the industry, coaching, workshops, consulting, all that sort of stuff. And what do you do? He's like, drywall. I'm like, no kidding. Where do you work? And he's like, baker. And I'm like, bro. So is that I think Brian Kraft, is that the guy in Fort Worth? He's like, yeah. I'm like, man, Preston Presley is one of my best buds. And he just started cracking up. So it was a cool small world moment. He didn't even recognize the logo, and we got down to the bottom of we roll with the same people.
Yeah, there you go. So I've forgotten, but for a minute, like nobody can see your shirt. So I will describe it, but it is like I guess it's the new Texo polo shirt. It's like all white with 100,000 versions of the Texo box logo on there all over.
Yeah. So no matter where you look, it's pretty prominent.
Yeah, I think it's a great shirt. It's very comfortable, but I can only wear it, as I was saying earlier, like trapping it under a quarter zip, just like I have done with this insanely loud one I have on today that has like all the mixer trucks and stuff on it. Have you seen this one?
It's pretty busy.
Oh my gosh, it's wonderful and it's super comfortable, but it is so loud. And interestingly enough, trapped it underneath a Baker quarter zip. Yeah, so there you go. Double shout out to Baker. So
yeah, bills in the mail. So dude's name was Ryan Peoples. I think he's a project manager, just started over there about a month ago. So shout out to him for sparking a conversation that led to a pretty cool small world moment.
Yeah, I got a small world moment, and then we can talk about our guests. Here's a fun one though. You ready?
Yeah.
No preppy on this, just a cold story. About 15 years ago, I went to I think it's AGC does or maybe it's the American Bar Association division does a construction law sort of practicum, if you will, for trial lawyers. So I went to DC for 3 days and spent those days like doing a mock trial, you got like a fake construction fact pattern and tried cases for a couple days and all this stuff, super like nerdy lawyer talk stuff. And I got paired up with this guy, just random draw, like you need co-counsel, random draw, paired up with this guy, Justin. And stayed in touch with him. He was from Ohio at the time. LeBron was coming on the scene, so just pinged him all the time. Like I think he grew up like outside of Akron or something. So yeah, what's it like being a kid from Akron and blah blah blah. Stayed in touch with him over these years, and fast forward, I was like, man, I need some help from a lawyer in Ohio, and there was only one person that I could, right? So I called Justin and caught up with him. I guess it was yesterday, maybe it was the day before yesterday. Caught up with him for like 20, 30 minutes, just catching up on life. I hadn't seen him in 15 years, stayed in touch. And then turns into like, I needed some help. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely could do help with that. Right. And so as I'm having this conversation with him, I was thinking about those moments and those people that like you run into and you never know, right? Like there was no way he could have ever known that fast forward 15 years and I would need some help in Ohio and would call him. And that obviously wasn't the reason I stayed in touch with him. I just keep in touch with folks. But there was that moment I had of like, man, everybody has these touch points all day long. Like this guy you bumped into at the gym happens to be in construction. Like, you never know where those touch points go. And just reach out to people, check in with folks, say hello, give them a ping, say hi on LinkedIn, etc. Because one day kind of the power of your network starts to come together and you're like, man, I actually do know a lawyer in Ohio. His name is Justin. Yeah. And now he's the managing partner at the firm he's at and stuff. And so it's like, man, just the size of your network and the power of your network, man, there's a lot to it. Don't neglect it. And all the touch points, you never know when one of them is a great touch point and it's something that you need or you have something that someone else needs. So anyway, I had that moment this week that I wanted to share.
And wise words for how you treat people just in general. Like, we're in the construction space, so GC treating a sub like crap, you never know. They could become a developer. Like,
right.
Subs become developers, GCs become developers, GCs become subs. Like, they're not forever in that position. So how you treat people on the daily and the reputation you're building, could either pay dividends or really cut down your career based on those daily habits that you're building up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of, I'll give us a parlay back to the recap of the last few weeks. Speaking of folks with a great network and, keeping up with folks, Travis was on, was that 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? I forget.
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago now. I just love the come up story. I'm always partial to ones where you start from the bottom. And, I know he was a knucklehead back in the day as well. So we're relatable there. And, the start wasn't ideal, but it's effort and tenacity, positive attitude, can-do attitude, and all those character traits that we talk about so often. But you got to see one live out through his story and become the man he is today, which is a man that I'm very proud of for him. And he's highly respected and he's just getting warmed up. And, thinking back from where he started post-graduation to what he's able to provide for his family now is a radical transformation that's rooted in character.
Yeah. And I mean, I say this a little cheekily, but I think I mean it, is like, he's one of those guys that if I found myself stranded on the south side of Fort Worth with a flat tire in the rain, and I called him and said, "Hey dude, I need help," he would say, "Where are you?"
Yeah.
Sure. Like and so I've told that story a variety of times about trying to demonstrate like what the character of those individuals are. And he's one of them. He's like, he would say, "Where are you? I'll be there in 25 minutes or whatever."
No doubt.
So it's just great to have folks like that in your corner. And again, it kind of comes back to like, he's a great networker. He checks in, he follows up. He pulled that page out of the Matt Fisher book. But it's a good dude, man. Great story. And then I guess I missed Ashley, but that was last week for WIC Week as we sort of pulled that together.
Yeah, which is all. I mean, we know our purpose. We kind of knew it when we started, but now it's forged in steel. We understand where we stand in the industry of podcasting and in our construction industry, and we're all about sharing good stories that are inspiring and impacting people. And I think I sent it to you. A message or a moment of vulnerability that she shared on LinkedIn about the start of her business. And she had a 6-month-old and an 18-month-old and a mountain of adversity. She shared on the podcast that wasn't in that post that she was also let go from her business 6 weeks into her maternity leave, which is really uncool. And all of that, and then made it through that adversity through effort and a purpose and a vision. It's just an inspiring story to like, you just have to go again, back to character. You don't have to have it all figured out. And it was cool to hear from a recruiting standpoint what her vision is at Pillar Group. And it's about radically improving companies one person at a time. And there's companies that she's placed 30 plus people at, and she's transformed their business through hiring the right people that fit the culture and aligning with clients that match core values and, in the construction and developer space. But it was a really cool story to hear and share. And I know it made an impact on people.
Yeah. And folks who are in that space have a great horizontal view of what's going on in the industry, and then get a great vertical, like deep dive in trying to find, companies that fit with them, and then find people who fit with those companies. And I feel like always or I should say that differently. Every time we have a chance to speak with those folks, I feel like there's great insight from, what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, the things that they're accomplishing through doing it. So for sure.
Yeah. And one thing you don't know, kind of off air conversation, when messaged her to see if she wanted to share that full story on the podcast, she was like, I've been contemplating a podcast lately. And dude, she crushed. It was very natural at it. So after we hit stop on Audacity, I was like, you should seriously consider it. Like you're pretty natural at this. That was a very natural conversation. So we'll see where she goes with that journey. I love paying it forward. We've had several people lately that are like I had a jujitsu guy at the gym, like his name's Jeff, that I met. I see him at the gym every single day, but then I saw him at a tire shop when we were getting our tires at the same time. And we had like a 45-minute conversation. And in that conversation, the podcast came up at some point, and then he asked me for like any insights on starting his own because he wants to do one about jujitsu. I'm like, oh, bro, give me your email. I'll download you the bullet points.
Yeah.
And so we had that, and we had Scott Friend with the Construction Veteran podcast, which he sounds like a natural too. Very well spoken, professionals, like thoughtful, kind. He's got all those good core traits that should help with growing listeners and his impact.
Well, and telling great stories too. And I've enjoyed my sort of bent on here has been the stuff, right? The software and the buttons and the microphones and all that stuff. And so I've enjoyed getting to share even those like hyper technical experiences with folks who are trying to get going. It's like, no, come over to the studio. I'll show you what we got, and I'll tell you the mistakes we made and help you get going. Because there's, like you said, there's a lot of good folks out there doing a lot of good things, and it's space I'm happy to help out. And we are happy to help out, and I should say, no, yeah, for sure. And we should start leasing the studio. You think Texas would have beef with that?
We only got a few more months where we could do that. I'll one of the things Gerald Nichols says often is standing on the shoulders of giants. Yeah. And I think about that, like how many people were willing to help us early in the journey. And I think that softened up how competitive I am. Like, I was ruthlessly competitive, and I'm not anymore. Like, there's room for all of us. And when I hear you got that spark of entrepreneurship, or you want to do some philanthropical thing, like, I'm in. How can I help you? I'm going to share everything I got. Hopefully you do grab some of our listeners. Like, so what?
What's the analogy? I forget it. It's not how you divide the pie. It's that there can be more pie, or there's some like pie analogy related to kind of what you're saying. There's a listener who's like, that's not it, you moron. But it's something to that effect of like, we don't
probably Fisher.
Yeah. Ian, I think, is a good pie analogy guy. He used to say that the reward for winning the pie eating contest, you know what that is?
More pie.
More pie. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, pie analogy notwithstanding, like there's plenty of room for everybody. So we don't need
totally, man. And so we've been hustling, that's looking back, looking forward.
Correction. You've been hustling to get guests lined up. I saw the list. It was enormous.
Yeah, we haven't finalized some of the people on there, but we have a few. And thanks to Justin Parscale, we got Brad Blankenship coming, which is that'll be like, who knows, 130 by then. And it'll be the first person that recently retired. So he was a senior construction director or managing partner over at Cushman Wakefield. Mm-hmm. And he recently retired. And now we get to look back on a career and talk about that wisdom. And that's going to be a first time for us. We've never done that before. We've had people on the latter end of their career, but never finished. Yeah, it's over. And what sparked that, and lessons learned, and what mattered, dude, that's going to be action packed.
Love it. I haven't actually thought about that. We've not had someone retired looking back. So that'll be a great, not perhaps dissimilar, but a new vantage point on all of it. What was it all about, and what'd you learn, and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
And I think his wisdom holds a lot more weight. Like there's going to be woulda, coulda, shouldas too, I would assume, along the way. And those are going to be heavier than usual, and probably ones that we need to take notes on as leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a woulda, coulda, shoulda conversation yesterday with someone I was relaying the idea that at 4:30 every day, I run an Uber service for children. I don't know if you're aware of this, taking kids from one place to the other. And he said something, a couple of insightful things about that phase of his life when he was running an Uber service for children. And then I was like, those are good ones. I need to like jam those in the back of my head about just things he wished he had done differently or ideas he had that, and I was like, okay, write those down. Hold on to those because those are good, right? Those are good looking back ideas.
That's why we always need to be learning, man. I mean, there's things that come up in books or podcasts, and then the very next day I'm able to apply them like countless times. Like the gymnastics deal with Quinn and like putting your phone down because how often they're watching. And I'm putting my phone down, and she looked up at me 100 times in that one session. It was like, and that's all she wanted, that connection. Like, do you see me? Are you watching me? And then you look around the crowd and it's like, everybody's on their phone, man.
Dude, I had a use it immediately moment. We have a script this week and we're immediately off of it just per usual. But I had a immediately use it moment this week too, because I think it might have been on the Daily Dad. I'm talking about how when you get to spend time with your kids, you tend to talk about what you want to talk about because you're the parent, and you're like, hey, tell me about school or what. And then the idea was like just asking, what do you want to talk about? And I laid that on William last night on the way home from basketball practice. We were driving him. I was like, what do you want to talk about? And he was like, and then a few seconds passed because I realized like he didn't know what he wanted to talk about. And then by the time we got, to the next red light, he had thought of some stuff, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And we just talked about what he had on his mind. And I never asked him what he wanted to talk about. We just always talk about what I want to talk about or what I'm mad about or what I need to change or what we're going to fix or how we're, so it was interesting. Instantly put it to work.
Yeah. He was probably like, what's the catch, homie? Where are you going with this? Like, you're about to uppercut me tomorrow's ride, aren't you?
Is this a trap? I got another funny William story, and then we can talk about something else. But this weekend we played in the tournament, and he was like, he's super quiet and fairly reserved for the most part, but he was getting after the officials. And I was like, that's interesting. And at halftime, I was talking with the other coach, and the official that he was getting after came over to talk to us about him. And he started out by saying, I don't know which one of these parents is raising a little lawyer over here, and then he proceeded, and then we had an interesting conversation about it. And I didn't bother to tell him that it was my son, but when it was over, I was like, mission accomplished. I guess I am.
Story checks out.
Yeah. Story checks out, bro. Anyway, a story, like, add that to the list of stories that I tell that nobody cares about. Put that in that, tag it with that.
Bingo tile.
Stories I say, tell that nobody cares about. Check that box. Yeah. We're Wick Week. I'll hard left us into Wick Week. We're going to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But first, one more.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I got us way off the ditch.
Yeah. We got a power couple coming on the end of April, Vanessa and Scott Martindale. So I got hooked up with Scott through Taylor Hale. He made the introduction. And looking through what they do, man, they're beasts. They're beasts in the Christian community. So they wrote this book, Blended and Redeemed. They have a ministry called Blended Kingdom Ministries, and it's blended families. It's all about how to navigate a blended family. And he's involved in several other businesses. His book, Forward, is written by Jimmy Evans. So almost everybody in the Christian community knows Jimmy Evans. He's actually part of the Exo Marriage Ministry with Jimmy Evans. Just awesome. And so they're going to come. They got their book, which is a huge book. We're going to do a signed giveaway, get copies out to listeners. And it'll be the first time we interview a couple. So that'll be back-to-back firsts. That'll be an interesting dynamic and something we'll need to figure out how to navigate in the prep with, two come-up stories that converge together. That's pretty unique. It's not, it's going to take me a little more time on that preppy.
And to come back to like tech talk just a touch. We talked earlier this week. You're like, can we do an extra mic? And I was like, yes, we can do it. So wire it up, set it up, figure it out. But first with 4 people in the studio, at least recording at once. We did it. Yeah. We did it with our mountain movers. We did the multi-edit there around that random table, but we'll be able to do it in the studio. So that'll be fun. Duo recording. So that'll be fun. Yeah, for sure, man. Okay. Now can we talk about Wick Week? What's Wick Week, bro? I don't know. What is Wick Week? Yeah. So it was was it last week? I think we're in the middle of it as we're recording, so let's just call that out. But right, I think by the time this airs, we'll be a couple weeks removed from it.
It just got.
I was going to say,
Sorry.
generally, Wick Week celebrates and promotes. I'm reading off of the NAWIC website. Celebrates and promotes the role of women in the construction industry, and we've had the privilege of having like lots of women in well, probably not lots, but women in construction on the podcast to kind of tell their stories. But this week that week, not this week, but we celebrate those women for being in the construction industry. So that's the gist of it. Here's a fun fact for you. When did Wick Week start? Do you have any guess? Any idea?
2008.
1998.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been going on for a while. I mean, I guess I've only been tangent to the industry since 2004, and I feel like in the last decade or so, like it's gotten a lot more publicity, a lot more visibility, and it feels like this time. I mean, the LinkedIn was full of posts and stories and videos. And did you see that there was an awesome Texo? When did you see the Texo like TikTok for Wick Week? It was amazing. See if we can maybe cross link to that, but that was super fun.
And it doesn't feel obligatory too when you're looking at these. Like it's true celebration and it's powerful. There's a lot of people that have women in their companies. They're celebrating. GCs are celebrating subcontractor women. Like it's a lot of unification. It's awesome to see. And like people are the complaint this week, since we're in week right now as we're recording, is there's too many events. Like I would love to go to this one, but it interferes with this one. And that's the conversation right now. So many companies are stepping up and offering panel discussions, all sorts of things. I'm a moderator. We're recording on Wednesday. Tomorrow, a moderator for a Arco Murray panel that includes Holly Crowder, Kelly Hasso with Balfour Beatty, Jennifer Douglas with Dunaway Associates, and then Elena Dizdari with Arco Murray. So awesome panel. I get to lean heavily on Holly since I know her very well.
How did you get to moderate a Wick Week panel?
They asked me, and that's a good point to make. Like, because I knee jerk thought the same thing, but as men, we need to be a part of it. This is not the week where we isolate them. This is the week where we celebrate them, advocate them. But then the other 51 weeks, we need to be doing the same thing. We need to be at the table, having the conversations, sticking up for them, advancing, all that sort of things when it comes to anything diversity and inclusion. Like they shouldn't have to do this on their own. We should be part of that conversation. And I'm there to highlight them and just keep the conversation flowing. That's my only job. It's going to be all about them. That was really just a parlay to get us to talking about how we think about Wick Week as being women in construction, when in reality there's a huge play for the men to be involved in that and supportive of that. It's not just I think they're going to go to it, whatever, like it's a call for the men in construction to be engaged, involved, supporting, advocating, aware, etc. as well. And I feel like the industry is really stepping up. I mean, you could see it everywhere. So it's cool to see where's this going to be 5 years from now, and what will the stats be? The income gap between male and female, the percentage of construction that's female. Like I'm pretty confident both are going to increase tremendously, which is good for our industry, man. We can't be isolating our industry to half the population when we're one of the lowest rungs to pick from right now. That's a challenge. Workforce is an absolute uphill climb right now. And we need all the help we can get. And that needs to include the entire population. Yeah. I've been reflecting so much on this lately and having firsthand conversations and realizations of what diversity truly is. And, there's diversity of gender and skin color and all that sort of stuff, but like creating a culture where you can be who you truly are and who you're called to be is diversity. Like if you come in, you want everybody being a robot and being the same way. That's not. That could be. You could have multi-gender, multi-race, but if you don't give diversity a thought, like what's the point? And I had a really good conversation with somebody that I hired in a past life, and he was going to be the first Black person that joined our company or our office. And his biggest concern coming on board was that we were just checking the box. And and like, hey, are you guys like, did you guys actually want me? And that's the fear he's coming in. And that's not why we hired him. Like our what we stand for and our character and our core values and how you interview, that's number one. Like regardless, like that we need a great fit to the company. And what was cool for him to go on about was I could tell over time that wasn't it, you know, but like how many people do feel that, like women, for example, how do they fear that the company they're working for is checking a box, or do they feel that security blanket during the interview and then it proves out that they were checking a box? Like those are battles that we've never faced, you know? Right. And those are good conversations to have to understand that side of the fence, which has been really cool to have and really enforces in me like my whole be weird concept. Like, I want you to be yourself, and being your best self, like whatever that Dr. Seuss quote, you're the best you could be, or whatever, the truest you. There's nothing more powerful than that. And the freedom you get when you're able to be your true self. And we've talked about it on here. Like it's just a countdown before your weirdness comes out around me. Like it's only a matter of time. And some of the most clean cut people, and mannered people, all of a sudden start making random sounds and adding boy to the end of every word and like all the crazy things. And it's like, oh, it warms my heart. That provides diversity.
You have somehow managed to create the be your own brand of weird in a way that is normalized, right? It's like, no, it's okay to like, you know, little rubber duckies on your desk or whatever. Like it's cool. Bring them up here. Tell us about them. That's totally chill. Because you know what? I love ska music, and you wouldn't have known that, and I wouldn't have said anything if you hadn't had those stupid duckies on your desk, and we could have shared our moment of collective weirdness. You know? Yeah. Which, by the way, I don't actually like ska music, but
but I see rubber duckies lined up across your desk.
No, not well, maybe, but.
You know, that's a big Jeep thing. You had a Jeep for a minute, or you still have a Jeep. That's a Jeep.
I still have a Jeep. Yeah, I still
What's
don't
the rubber duck thing on Jeeps? Why do I see them all over the dashboard?
Still
what does that mean?
Don't really know, but one time I had the top. Let's see, I had the top off the Jeep when we had gone somewhere, parked in a parking lot, came back out, and some other Jeeper had put a rubber ducky on my dashboard of the Jeep, and I felt like a little like I had been robbed, right? Like this dude was in my person was in my personal space, like, and then I started thinking about the Jeep rubber duckies. And I was like, it's probably like a affirmation of our Jeep hood, not an invasion of my Jeep privacy. But I still don't know what it is, man.
They're saying, hey, here's your starter kit. Like, let's start building up those Mr. T chains.
Yeah, let's see. The internet should be able to help us understand why that's the case, but Jeep ducking, that's what it's called. Jeep ducking began in Ontario when a Jeep owner decided to blah blah blah, and then it just took off.
There you go. It's like it's like the peace sign at the bottom on a Harley.
Yes, I didn't know that was a thing. Barry Brooks told me that was a thing. He's like, hey, you got to drop the peace sign when you roll by another. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, I just didn't do it to crotch rockets. Only Harleys.
Yeah, that's part of the bit. Is like it's not all motorcycles. It's the Harley Club.
Well, you know, some cruisers would throw the peace sign. I don't know if I always reciprocated.
The cruisers, that doesn't count. Like that's a different brand, like Harley Club, but not this club.
Yes. What is that? A scooter? Dude, off the rails.
Yeah, for
sure. When I was getting my motorcycle exam, this lady brought a Ladybug scooter and she had no idea how to ride it. What a wild test, man. That thing went launching several times. And the scariest part, she still passed.
Yeah.
This thing was driving her. She was not driving it. It was, whoa.
There was whenever you got your driver's license, did you have to take, you took driver's ed or something, but did you have to take a simulator course? Does that mean anything to you?
No, driving straight up driving.
Yeah, we had to do, they dropped this 18-wheeler off in the parking lot of the school. We had to do simulator. And you would go in there, and this was like before computers were cool, right? And it was like this weird video and these fake cars, and you had to like pretend drive them around stuff. And there was a video called Mixing with Motorcycles that you had to like navigate. It was just like motorcycles darting in front of you and trying to like brake check you the whole time. It was amazing.
That's the scary thing, man. Like through traffic when those motorcycles are weaving in and out, like with this much space. And I mean, they never know when I'm about to change lanes and poof,
Right. And boom. Yeah, it's super dangerous. I guess that's your PSA for mixing with motorcycles. Be safe out there. I don't know how
it's your ditch PSA of the week. But to wrap up,
we'll go ahead.
That was freaking awesome. It was electrifying week. So proud of so many companies leaning in and doing more than an obligatory post, really taking action, really valuing the females in our industry and celebrating them, and let's invite more in.
Yeah, second that. We probably abandoned some stuff because we've riffed on nonsense for a bit, but there's one remaining point on the prep sheet I do want to get to, because you titled it Leadership and Undercurrents, and the talking points through there are things I want to ask questions about, but I think it sort of arises from some conversations that you had with folks lately, or some concepts you've been leading through or working on lately.
I think it's really a theme of this podcast of like what rears its head and then continues to, like, repeatedly, and it's like that's something we gotta address. And the undercurrents, when I'm thinking of through leadership, it's personal reflection, it's people I'm coaching, it's companies I'm studying, and the undercurrents real. So to explain that, if you're not picking up what I'm talking about, let's say you got your purpose, your vision, and your core values, and you're saying we're beating the drum of that every single day. This is what we stand for, and let's lean into the core values, where the core values are integrity, trust, effort is non-negotiable. Shane Tolley shout out.
Yep.
But then behind the scenes, some of those same leaders beating those drums, or the next rung down that leadership ladder, they're stirring up the drama. They're not living those core values. They're talking bad about other employees or other departments, which we see often in construction, of pre-con versus ops, shop versus field versus ops. Like, when that stuff starts happening, that undercurrent can pull you down. It can pull you down, maybe not to ending your company, but you're a false representation of who you are. And so, like, in my journey of leadership, I have been guilty of being part of the undercurrent. So I'll put myself under the heat lamp first. Like, there's been people in my journey that I've hired that I've complained about. And I'm like, this is your fault. Like, so hire better. Like, stick to that. If you're really going to stand for those core values, make them a deep part of your interview. But know that the undercurrent is going to exist if you don't represent those things, those words on the wall, and they're very real. And there's a way to control that. And it starts with the individual, right? Like, don't be a part of that water cooler conversation that's talking about another department, talking about another person. Walk away from it. Don't start it, because it could really stir up out of control. One innocent comment can turn into something that really spins out of control quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What from your perspective then is the like the litmus test? That's not the right word. The check. How do you go find it? How do you go identify what the undercurrent is? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know it exists, and I'm not a part of it. But my concern is that it is there, and I'm not attuned to it. How do I figure it out?
If you have, like, let's say you're running the company, if you talk to each leader in the division consistently, you could start seeing the undertones. Me as a coach, if I'm coaching multiple people within the same company, I could pick them up pretty quickly. So, like, an outsider, kind of like if you proofread something for me, like, you'll see it instantly.
Right.
Or like, that's why we always check work of stock length takeoffs and glass sizes and stuff. Like, you've been staring at estimates. You've been staring at the same spreadsheet for a week. I come in and I'm like, hey, that's not transferring over. And I could see it instantly.
Right.
Sometimes a third party perspective helps. Advocating for transparent conversations, like referencing Jeff Parsons with shared leadership, call BS. That's a brilliant concept of, this isn't just one grand poobah that's calling it all, but the people have the say of what's going on and what's going wrong. So there's a lot of that, but it really comes down to the individual too. Like, if you're talking bad about somebody that works there, that's actually an opportunity to either tell a boss that somebody doesn't fit, or tell that person that, like, hey man, I'm really noticing that this about you. Like, talk to that person directly. Like, why stir up the undercurrent? It's like, I mean, the undercurrent can be relayed to high school gossip. And like, do you
Yeah,
really
right.
want your business to be about that life? Like, that's no fun. And nobody's got time for that as adults and leaders with families and careers to aspire for. Like, get it out of the way. And I'll credit some very transparent people in my journey that they would let me know what the undercurrents are.
Yeah.
And as a leader, they hurt my heart. Like when, you know what I stand for. And when I start hearing about people trashing people, and people was our, a first core value and part of the vision statement, man, that hurts and it's frustrating. I'm angry. But I'm glad that they were brought up because they need to be addressed and we need to punch it in the mouth because that you can slow that undercurrent down by just rifle approach, hit it right between the eyes.
Yeah. So two takeaways there, and a riff on one of them is like it's you're not going to pick it up if you're not communicating with your people.
That's right.
You don't know about the undercurrents if you live in an ivory tower. So, get out in the shop, so to speak, and go down to the floor. Whatever sort of a analogy you want to use there, but you got to linger with the people that you're working with and for to hear the things that need to be heard, right? And then there's some component part of that it feels like if I was a child, I would say it was a narc, but you have to have like that second tier underneath you also listening and aware of all the things that we're talking about here as well, so that when they hear them, if they're not empowered organizationally to resolve them, they have ears to hear them and enough, latitude with you through transparency to say, man, look, it's not my place to say or to fix the fact that, X is not compatible with Y, however that math works out organizationally, but I need to bring it to your attention because you are at a space that you can fix it.
Yes, but you also have to protect that person to some regard, right? Like you got to be thoughtful on the approach, and it might be pulling people together as a group and addressing it without addressing it or rifling it. Like, but if you rifle it, is that person suspect to being called out? That creates its own undercurrent.
Yeah,
like you got to be mindful and play chess, not checkers. You got to see all the moves ahead. And protect that person. I've had times where I was like, okay, I'll figure out a way to bring this up and sniff it out. And, but yeah, it's good to be there. Do not assume that they're not there. If you're just assuming everything's hunky dory, you're probably missing the boat. How many times have assumptions bit us in the butt in our life, man?
Oh yeah.
Well, the root of a mistake or a failure, you usually say in the sentence, I assumed X.
Yeah. Right. One of the tactics I've used there about like trying to figure out how and when I can use whatever information is to just be direct with the person who's providing me the information. Is it okay if I tell so-and-so that you told me X? No? Okay. At least now I know the rules of engagement with respect to the ensuing game of chess. Because sometimes they're like, I don't care. Like, I would be fine for you to say that. I just don't have a direct line of communication with that person to tell them. You know what I'm saying? Like, not making an end around, but just like being clear with how and when and at what point you're authorized to utilize the information that you're being told, I think helps avoid I'm scared to tell him something because I don't know what he's going to do with it. And it opens
especially leading up.
Opens those levels of transparency.
Yeah, leading up. I mean, you got to try some things on for size or really reflect on who you're leading up to. But like if they're trashing somebody in the company and like you're being a part of it, like, man, I feel uncomfortable when we're talking so poorly about one of our team members, and maybe you'll snap that person out of it and it's non-threatening. That's the crazy thing, dude. If your come up, if that's you work for your first company and your boss at that time is trashing everybody around them, which I've been a part of that undercurrent becomes part of your standard because you think that one company represents how the entire industry is operating. And then you're a cog in the wheel. You're like, oh, I guess I'm going to join the club because you don't know any better.
Yeah, take that and cross multiply it though, because, and I'm not saying you specifically, I mean you generically in this instance, but you only, had one set of parents. And so you only know how to parent based on having observed them parent. And then you do the things that they did on the basis that, well, that's how we do it. Or you've only seen one parent interact with the other, husband and wife, and so you're like, well, that's how husband acts, or what, so you have these like preconceived notions based on all different sorts of your aspects of your life that you're translating through too, right? And you may not even know it. It's like unconscious lessons that you've learned that if you're not, to kind of bring it full back circle, is if you're not like constantly learning, you're not constantly listening, you're not constantly reading, you're not constantly reevaluating what you're doing, you're not constantly having people in your life to say, check it against some other truth that's not all this stuff. Well, then you go from that job to the next job and you talk bad about your coworkers because that's all you ever knew.
That's right. Cliffhanger.
Off you go. Same
thing with habits.
Yeah. Off you go on a death spiral mission to, not accomplish anything. And so, anyway, little riff at the end there on just like, man, keep learning, keep leaning in, keep asking hard questions, keep reading, keep listening, all that sort of stuff.
For sure. Because you don't learn it once and then it sticks with you forever. Trust me. You got to keep repeating that over and over.
Yeah. That's a funny hard lesson, is that I used to think like, oh, just tell me once, I'm good. Oh no. Tell me a million times and I'm going to forget. Tell me, and then you have to tell me again. And that's just part of life, man.
For sure.
All right. I think we, at 40-ish minutes, just hack the last section of our little prep sheet off. Save it for another time.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. You got it, man.
All right, cool. Nice to see you. Good hanging out.
Likewise.
And for you listeners out there, y'all keep moving mountains.